Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So we're thinking maybe we'll just start with a short introduction and then we'll get stuck into the questions. I love that it's anonymous questions. Let's all get engaged. Don't think that I didn't answer questions, that's not my question. But let's just use this question as a focal point of discussion for everyone. It doesn't mean it's your question, it just means we're all discussing this one thing. Okay. So we thought just about relationships. What is the goal of our relationship? What's the purpose? And what we came up with is it's not just about having a companion. The idea is, what is my goal? What is my purpose in life? What's my goal in life? My goal, of course, is God, is to get into the kingdom of heaven. And so the goal of I have to ask myself, what is the goal of my relationship? And the goal of my relationship has to be in harmony with that. And they both have to be the exact same thing. My relationship has to be part of my overarching goal of my whole entire life to get to heaven, to come into heaven, to get into the kingdom of heaven. So, and also in the part of this process, this is an exercise. The dating process is what we're talking about, right? The dating process. Part of the exercise is finding and discovering myself throughout the process. Okay. Because how do I know if I'm patient if my patience has never been tested? If I've never been put in it, or how do I know I'm tolerant if I've never really had someone I had to be tolerant of and I've only ever lived completely by myself? And so this whole overarching theme is God and getting into the kingdom of heaven. My partner is only part of that and is a cherry on top. So I can't put all my focus on this cherry and forget the whole cake. I can't forget the whole meal and just only focus on this cherry. And so accordingly, I can't think to myself that that the goal is my relationship. As we said, if my life is a straight line, this is where I am, and my goal is heaven. So in finding a partner, they need to have the same thing. They're also on their own line, and their own life, and their goal is heaven. And so if we both have the same goal, then our lives should run very much parallel to each other with the same end goal. It's not about us becoming, just meeting each other and that's it, I'm done, but both of us having the same end goal. And the more common our goal is, the more suitable it's going to be.
I guess I'll give the more cynical point of view. Abuna's usually sunshine and daisies. I'm a bit more cynical. We just want to emphasize that dating is the time to be analytical. It's the time of your life where, the deal's not done. It's the time to be analytical. It's the time to self-reflect and think, what do I want from myself in this relationship? What do I want from my future husband in this relationship? For myself, I want growth. I want spiritual growth. I want growth in every other domain of my life, From my husband, I want someone who's going to communicate with me, someone who's going to meet my emotional needs, someone who, when we argues right. And so I think it's really important to be analytical. I think it's counterproductive to be obsessed, and counterproductive to be just emotionally involved and not, have your rational on. So I think it's important to keep an eye out for red flags. And I think that's when your confession father comes into play. We're very lucky in our church to have confession fathers. And I think in relationships, and this is just my opinion because I'm no expert, I think in relationships it's super important to have someone holy and objective. And that works out to be our confession father. And it should be from day zero. Like I remember for us, before I even entertained the idea, the slightest interest I thought was coming my way, I went to my confession father, and there was this, he's got this waiting room in his little apartment, and who was there? He was there. And so I knew why he was there, and he knew why I was there. So I made some excuse to leave, and I left, and I went there. But it was just really nice to see that we're both getting our confession father's opinion and approval from day zero, because he knows my spiritual needs, he knows his spiritual needs. So, yeah.
Should we get started? So maybe kind of leading off that, one of the questions is asking, is it a red flag if you don't have the same sort of discipline when it comes to physical intimacy in a relationship?
So I think physical intimacy will come up a couple of times. Physical intimacy. Okay, so it's best you keep your purity 100%. If ever in doubt, you err on the side of caution, which is nothing at all. But you speak to your confession father, and he will guide you with that. Now, in thinking about this, and listening to other talks and priests and confession fathers, the issue with physical intimacy, first of all, it's the golden rule that you keep your purity. Physical intimacy is reserved for marriage. But let's just say we're talking about hugging or holding hands or whatever it is, and there's a spectrum. The issue is it's a slippery slope. And how long are you going to be dating for? Right? As soon as you start that slope, you don't know how steep it's going to be, you don't know how long it's going to be, so it's a slippery slope. And that's why the golden rule is err on the side of caution, nothing is best, but you speak to your confession father. The other issue with it is that it clouds your judgment. And so there could be a lot of things that come up that you might brush under the rug because your judgment is clouded because you feel good about this. You feel comfortable, but it's overriding what you should really be thinking about. Can you just repeat the question just to make sure?
Is it a red flag if you don't have the same sort of discipline when it comes to physical intimacy in the relationship?
I don't have much. Like if I rephrase it, it's just go with the lowest common denominator. You know, I think that's the safest. Before marriage, it's nice to have the lowest common denominator, right? When you're married, the time will come for physical intimacy, and it's very special when you've reserved that for your husband or wife. I think it's just go with the lowest common denominator and ask your confession father. I don't believe there's anything you can't ask your confession father. And I guess they know the relationship, they know where you're both at, and they'll guide you.
Yeah, and I think if you both aren't on the same page, it's definitely a conversation to be had. There's nothing, you should also speak to your partner about that. And, you know, I like the idea of going to your confession father. Don't just go speak to your confession father, but go willing to listen to what your confession father has to say. A lot of the time,
so are you saying we should have the same confession father?
Sorry, we alluded to that because that was the case for us, but no, not necessarily at all. But you guys have to be on the same page, and if you know, as the question asked, if you're not on the same page, then you should speak about that and make sure that there's guidance from your confession father.
I think it's important to talk about these things. You know, I think it's important to have these conversations, to set limits to the relationship, because, you know, one day someone might be strong and the other day someone else might be strong. I think it's important to have conversations and to set limits, and you both know where your limits are. And if you fall, both repentantly go to your confession father and you move on from that.
Okay, the next question is, should we make our dating life public on social media, e.g. declaring the relationship, or should we keep it private until we're certain about marriage?
Just before we move on, feel free to talk back and tell us that was a terrible answer, you haven't answered the question, or yes, Chris.
I have a question. You know the 5 love languages, one's physical intimacy,
yeah.
And more likely the female will feel that more, just according to science. Okay. So sometimes the female might be like, oh, you don't love me because you don't, like,
yeah,
and she might need you.
Yeah. So I haven't. So the question was, but there's 5 love languages, and one of them is physical touch. And so, what if that's someone's? Well, it's not the time for it. It's not the time for it. You know, I'm not sure exactly how the book goes. I didn't read it, but certainly, if that is a love language, then once you're married, then express a love language that way. Physical touch, say, you know, I'm here, or you know, whatever it might be. And sometimes physical, that language of love could just be, you know, your presence or this or that or what. So, but certainly it's not a good enough reason to compromise.
I think it's more in terms of it's more in terms of the guy having more drive, the girl saying no, and it's sort of like they become complacent that they rely on the girl to hold the responsibility of abstaining, and the guy holds resentment because she won't give in.
Yeah. No, thank you. But I think that it's the girl shouldn't give in, and this should be a conversation had. And if anything, from the guy's perspective, he will respect his partner, his female partner, his female dating partner, fiance, so much more because he can see how honourable she is, and that she's holding God's commandments higher than his. And the girl shouldn't fold. Taking that example, the girl shouldn't fold to that. And likewise, if the girl ever sees that the guy is, Buddha, we reserve this one just for you. And likewise, if the guy sees, if the girl sees that the guy is honouring God more than he's honouring, his partner, then that's going to be beneficial to the relationship. So should the girl care that I'm upsetting my boy partner because I'm not giving him what he's expecting? No, you're accountable to God more than you're accountable to your partner, and your partner will and should respect that. And if he doesn't, well, back to our our opening remarks, then his goal isn't aligned with yours, that God is number one. And if he's not willing for you to honour God before him, then maybe there's a bigger issue there. Maybe there's a red flag. I hope that answers the question.
Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? No? Okay. I'll repeat the question. So should we make our dating life public on social media, or should we keep it private until we're certain about marriage?
I'm very old. I didn't even know how to operate the airdrop that you guys were doing. But I'm not sure why social media is such a big deal. But if we take that out of the question, I think it's really nice to start your relationship just between you guys, perhaps your parents and your confession father, and get to know each other. I don't think it needs to be overly, every couple's different, but I don't see the need why it needs to be so public when the intention is you're figuring out, is this guy or is this girl the one I'm going to marry? Perhaps when the time is right, sure, go ahead and make it public on social media, but what is your goal? Like, what's the goal as you're trying to get to know each other? I don't feel like that's a need.
Does anyone else have anything they want to say? No? Okay, maybe a nice question, kind of going off that, is at what point should we introduce our parents to our partner?
I think very, very early on. So social media is one extreme and parents is the other. I think very, very early on. The harm in not, first of all, your parents have been involved in your life the whole time, and if all of a sudden they're not involved in such a big decision, it might make it very difficult for them. Let's just say Justina's dating someone, and she starts dating me and doesn't tell her parents. When her parents finally get involved, it's going to make my job a lot harder to build a nice relationship with them if they see that I've distanced her from them. And also, it's very honourable and respectful of me to speak with my parents about it. So, as there's a question that I saw about when do you meet the parents or whatnot, well, it's a very different story, very different question, and it's not one size fits all. But between me and my parents, between Yoss and her parents, between anyone, my opinion is very, very early on. Do you agree with that?
Is that suggested? And if so, how does one go about it?
So the question was if
If they don't give their
the
blessing.
parents are against it.
Yeah.
Look, I think not, but I think we should never have a blanket rule, right? We have to honor our parents and respect what they have to say, and if they don't want it, then maybe it's not a good idea. If perhaps there is some odd extreme example out there, that's a different story. But I think as the overarching rule, what would you say, Paul?
Yeah, I agree. I think generally speaking, you should have the blessing of your parents before you go ahead. That's a general rule, okay? And it's important that blessing is yours. So be careful. And if you do decide to go ahead with the relationship against your parents' will, which you can do, at the end of the day, no one is going to force you if you decide to put your foot down and go against your parents' will. But you enter that relationship and you enter that life at your own risk, okay? And you have to be very cautious. 99% round of people that have major trouble later on in their relationship, when you go back, they were advised not to go for that relationship. Vast majority were advised at some point to an extent or another, sometimes extremely advised against it, and they start to have trouble. Now, does that mean everyone who was advised against it has problems? Not necessarily, but the vast majority do, and the ones who do have problems typically were very clearly advised very early on, and they chose to plow ahead. Then you enter at your own risk, and then when you suffer, then they cry, oh, she's this and she's that, and you were warned.
I'll just offer a female perspective. I think it can be quite intimidating for girls to go up to their parents and tell them about a guy. And I think that's a cultural thing more than anything. But I think it's so important because they'll surprise you and they were there one day. So I remember in our situation, I had every intention of going and telling my parents, but my confession father didn't let me, and he said, let me tell them because I want them to say yes. And so
Let me take this one.
So I was walking out and he was pulling my dad aside. And so I think, and then I come home and they're Facebook stalking the wrong Betty. But nonetheless, I think, I think they'll surprise you, and I think their blessing is so important.
Okay, the next question is, how do I know if the hardships in my relationship are toxic and I should break it off, or if it's just a learning curve?
Well, I think you have to have an objective person to ask, a holy person to ask, your confession father. It's hard to know sometimes what's toxic and what's not. So, for example, what is toxic? If my partner is controlling, if my partner is emotionally abusive, if my partner is this, that, then of course that's toxic, and I should break it off. So how do I know? You have to speak to someone trusted, and most advisably your confession father. And as we said before, be prepared to listen as well to your confession father, to take on that advice.
That's another advantage of having your parents involved, because they might see that behavior and they might be able to help you navigate that as well. So parents are another point where you can help. And again, in general terms, you're not married. As long as you're not married, once you're married, that question doesn't apply, right? What if you're not married? Well, if you really feel like I'm really, really struggling and I can't overcome these hurdles and it's too much work, then yeah, it's something for you to reconsider. That it's too much and I'm laboring just to keep this thing alive. You shouldn't be feeling that feeling, well, I'm laboring to make this thing work.
Okay, how can I stop adopting my partner's gossiping habits?
I think you need to have a conversation with your partner. I think you need to identify gossiping is an issue. And I think your partner should then recognize it is an issue too. And I think you should both be on the same page. I think it takes two to tango. So it's really hard to gossip if the person in front of you is telling you, I'm not interested. And over time, I guess that might brush onto them. And that's similar with any sin, not just gossiping. If you feel like your partner is not encouraging you spiritually or bringing you down, I think it's something you need to pray about. It's something you need to speak to your confession father about, and something you need to address. And I think both of you should be repentant, and both of you should want to change.
Okay. How do I handle it when a partner discusses private matters with others on personal issues within the partnership?
I think the privacy or the confidentiality within the partnership is very important, but by the same token, we have to be discerning with what is private and what isn't. For example, we keep referring to speaking to your confession partner because within our church it's a very valuable resource that we have. And if you don't speak to people, then you're really closing yourself in, and things can boil and really easy to correct, or easy to iron out, but without. So I think there is advantage to speaking to people, but it depends. Am I speaking to someone who is useful, someone who is reliable, someone who is going to be honest with me, give me valuable advice, or am I just speaking to my, BFF, and it's not helpful? So I would, for me personally, I would respect, I would appreciate privacy, and I should respect privacy. Do you guys think that that's what the question is asking?
I was going to say, I feel like it's something that we will discuss with the partner. Like, I would want my partner to let me know that, if you are going to have that discussion with someone, that I'm also well aware of the person that you're having that discussion with. Maybe I might have an issue with the person that they're discussing with, or I don't see that, the person that they're going to discuss with is the right person. So I think it's at the very least having the discussion with your partner, like, look, I hear where you're coming from. I don't feel like this is going anywhere. Can I have, I want to speak to a friend. I just want to get another opinion, rather than doing it without having your partner know, and then they find out, or you find out after that they've had that discussion behind your back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we keep referring to the confession father, which is very important, but let's just say it's a mutual friend who is a trusted servant or a mentor at church. We might both say, oh, you know what? Let's speak to person X about it. So I'd agree. Anything to add?
Okay. My partner was okay with something at the start of the relationship, but now suddenly isn't. I feel like I can't be honest with them about it, or they'll be angry. What is your?
Look, in general terms, that is a very specific situation. So that's something that you need advice from your confession father about how to manage it and how to navigate it. If it's gotten to the point where there's something in the relationship, that the bottom line is I have to be comfortable in the relationship. If something has been already expressed between us and one partner can't let it go, or can't manage it, or doesn't like this behavior in me, and it's repeated and repeated and repeated, and he just can't let it go, or she can't let it go, well, then why are we continuing? We have to be comfortable in a relationship. We have to trust each other in a relationship. So it doesn't really matter what's happened, as long as the baseline, or the where we're moving forward through, is in a place of trust, comfort. I don't feel excessively vulnerable, etc. Then okay, that relationship can continue. But if there is things in the relationship that's just this constant source of tension and frustration, it's core to who I am or whatever, then we be cautious about that. But I think in this particular case, depending on what it is, you have to have your advice.
Okay, kind of going off that, what is the best way to handle conflicts or disagreements?
I've always been told by my confession father is never respond to something in the heat of the moment. He always says, go downstairs, make a cup of tea, make it with mazeg, put a sugar in it, peppermint, whatever. And by the time you drink it, you're unemotional. So then you can have a nice unemotional conversation. And I think, I don't know if you guys have heard about gentle parenting. It's a different phase of life, but you can gentle partner as well. And the way you say things in a conflict can make or break the way you resolve it. So if, for example, someone's very aggressive, the person in front of them is probably going to be very defensive. But if you say, oh, look, I felt like this in this particular situation, they're likely to respond very differently. That's my 2 cents.
I think agreeing with all of that, I think it's normal to have disagreements, and it's healthy to have disagreements, especially while you're dating, because you will have disagreements when you're married, and the journey through that disagreement, it's nice to see how you and your partner are going to overcome them in the future.
I think as a rule, though, with disagreements in the engagement period, the dating period, is they shouldn't be too common and they shouldn't be too extreme. Okay, so even if they're few and far between, but they are, the world is just exploded, well then be cautious. Or every second day, we're just arguing, bickering about every little thing from now. Again, it might be just a short stage, it's okay because we're frustrated or whatever, but if it's constant, then be cautious. So extreme or too common, both those things you be cautious about.
Is it okay to care about your partner's financial state, like if they're saving money and how they're spending? Is it okay to talk to them about these things?
I think it's how you read the question. So I'd love to hear your feedback. If I'm just starting to call someone and starting to speak to them, and I would feel like it's a bit too forward. It's not really necessary. How much do you earn? How much do you save, or whatnot? But if you're talking about, having said that, it's important to know, is my partner extremely stingy, and that's something that it's not going to fly for me. But again, I think you can judge that without asking those specific questions. But moving on in timeline, if it's closer to, or I'm getting engaged or married, I'm working out finances or whatever, then yeah, I think it's normal. There's nothing to hide. My money is your money. There's no such thing as how much I earn or how much you earn, and it's one also a practical question. I think if I'm reading it correctly, early on, I think it's probably unnecessary. What do you think?
Okay. All right, moving on then, how can I stop being affected by everyone around me getting into relationships when I don't feel ready to settle down yet?
There is a natural need in all of us is put into us by God to have desire for the opposite sex, to have the emotional need of being in a relationship. There is a natural desire. So if everyone around me starts going down that pathway, I might start feeling like either I'm pressured to go down that pathway, or I really want it and it's not coming for me at this stage, and it can be very frustrating. And that frustration is a very natural frustration. It would actually you'd be a little bit abnormal if that wasn't the case for you, that everyone around me is going down that pathway. Maybe you're for monasticism, if you're not really notice or care, But most people will notice and they will care and they will have this natural desire to go down that road. So in the meantime, you are just building yourself and you're building your relationship to God, and you're trusting in that greater plan from God as He carries you. So because what will happen, some people, as they go through that stage and then either not ready or it's not happening right now, is you can go down a very negative pathway. Mentally, even with the mistakes I make, I start loosening myself from God completely. Whereas I should be clinging to God more and building myself so that when God sees fit, then I am an appropriate partner for an appropriate partner. So you just work on yourself in that time so that God, then you are available to whoever God wants you to be available to in due time. You never know when and how that's going to come. God will sort it out. But in the meantime, the emotions and the feelings that come if you see people around you, that's normal and it's expected, and God will support you through that. It's not a big deal. It is absolutely natural.
Okay, what are some warning signs to watch out for in someone when it comes to their spirituality?
I think more so determining if they're heading in the same direction as you. Like Abuna said at the start, is that it's sort of two parallel lines. You both want to reach the same goal. You don't have to be both at the spiritual state, same state, I don't think. For example, if you're working out with someone at the gym, one can be lifting 20 kilos, one can be lifting 100 kilos, but you both have the same goal. So I think as long as you, everyone's laughing, I know nothing about the gym, but I just think that as long as you're both heading in the same direction, as long as it's a spiritual incline, not a decline. And speak to your confession father. I know we've said that about 30 times, but I guess he knows your spiritual needs most, and he.
Okay, this question kind of leans to what you were saying before, but what are your views on personal space and alone time within a relationship?
I love personal space. Everybody's different. And I think you guys did the color-coded camp, right? Everybody's different. I personally love my personal space. I have a day to myself a week where I'm kid-free, husband-free, and it's perfect. I'm just recharged and ready for it. And you know, now after preschool, it's not a day to myself anymore, but that's okay. But no, I think if you need personal space, I think it's important to the relationship, or else you just burn out.
Yeah. I'll add the flip side to that is that I still have a commitment to my spouse. Let's say I love my personal space, but you know, wake up, I'm married, I'm not single anymore. So I think my spouse should respect that I need a little bit of personal space, but I need to respect that. I need to respect my spouse and their needs. I'm not. I have responsibilities, and I can't take unrealistic personal space. And I think actually, a little bit on a tangent, when you start to get married, it's like life is teaching you to become less selfish. All of a sudden, it's not about what I want to do right here, right now. And then you have kids, and you realise, oh, even more so, it's not about me at all. So it's a learning. It's a learning curve.
What if you kind of take that too far then, and you feel like you're losing yourself in a relationship? How do you go about making sure that that doesn't happen? And then if it does happen, how do you correct?
What do you mean by losing yourself?
There was, yeah.
I'm open for help.
Look, at the end of the day, look, you should feel comfortable in a relationship. Okay, so always remember this, and I've said the same thing now a few times, where you should feel comfortable in a relationship. Now that doesn't mean you're fully selfish and you do whatever you want whenever you want, right? But at least I feel, at least in this stage, that some of my needs are being met. I feel comfortable. I feel it's okay to say that I need a bit of space, and the person respects that. I feel it's okay to say I'm a bit emotionally needy right now, and the person respects that. Whatever it is that you feel you need in a relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that you go down this selfish pathway where I'm just demanding. But you're entitled to a little bit of selfishness in this stage, just so you can be comfortable. And what will happen naturally if the relationship is suitable is, generally speaking, I feel settled and comfortable in the relationship, generally speaking. Every now and then, all right, my need wasn't met in this particular case or that particular case. But in general, I feel settled. But if I feel unsettled most of the time, I just feel unsettled. I feel like I'm changing too much. It's not who I am. My needs are never met. I just feel, now maybe I am a bit excessively selfish, maybe, but that's something I still need to work on before I can even enter a relationship, because I cannot continue if I just feel unsettled all the time. Okay, so, and part of it is this feeling that I'm changing too much. I'm adapting too much. It's too hard. In that case, be cautious of the relationship that you're in. Again, get spiritual advice. Okay, maybe there is an issue in you that needs dealing with, maybe, but don't just plow ahead because I'm worried I'm not going to have another relationship and I'm just fully unsettled in this relationship. Be a bit more discerning and cautious than that.
Okay, there's a few questions that are... there's a few questions that are kind of along the same line. I'll try to summarize them, but they kind of are inquiring, how do you know when you're ready to commit to one person, and going about kind of figuring out if you have feelings for more than one person, how do you figure out who the one person is that you should kind of commit to? And then if it's okay to be talking to numerous people at the same time to figure out who the one for you is.
I think it's not okay to be speaking to more than one person at the same time. I mean, we're all speaking together here at one time. That's obviously very different. But if I can't be courting or flirting with someone, that means that is excessively selfish, because I'm leading someone on, because be it person A, person B, I'm leading them on incorrectly. That was one half of the question, or was the other half?
And then how do you know when, like, there's someone that you're ready to commit to? The question was, how do I know that I'm ready to commit to one person and that I truly like them for the right reasons?
Yeah, so I think you've really got to put your end destination. Well, your end destination is this person going to be my partner to get to heaven together? Are they going to encourage me? Am I going to encourage them? Are we going to have a holy home? Are we going to have a holy family? Is our home going to be a church? Is that my goal? So it can't be, for me, she has these qualities, but she has those qualities. Which one do I value more? What's more compatible? And I think a very big, important part of it is I pray for God's will. I think, where does God want me to be? Who does God want me to be with? I think it's one of, now that I think, that we have kids and they're so far away from marriage, I think it's the biggest decision of their entire life. Not to scare you, but that's what I think. I think it's much more important than what they're going to study. And how much effort do we put in our study and prayer and this and monastery trips? So I think it's extremely important. So we pray for God's guidance and God's will. But in the meantime, I don't just say, let me cast my net far and wide and see where it lands. If there is someone, then after I pray and I know what I'm going to do, I be decisive. I either take a step forward or I take a step back. I'm not in this chronic flirting stage. Anything?
I was just going to say, if you haven't yet started dating and you have a few people you're thinking about, make a list and write all their flaws and all their... No, I'm joking.
I just had a quick question. Back to the courting one, just to play sort of devil's advocate. Just to play devil's advocate back on that courting question of multiple people. I've heard some people say, or there's an idea that I don't really owe anyone anything at this stage. It's up to me who I talk to. It's up to me who I want to get to know. If I want to get to know more than one person, that's up to me. I'm not married to them. I have no commitment to them. It could be seen as selfish, but is it necessarily kind of spiritually speaking wrong to try to be courting a multiple person at once?
I think it is, and I'd love to be corrected. And the reason why I think it is because you do have someone to answer to. You are answering to God. You have to be honest in front of God. And I'm causing harm and potential detriment to other people. And you do have to answer to God. So I just wanted to correct that part.
I think if you're very, very early on, I haven't yet committed to this person, we haven't spoken, expressed interest, anything like that, and there's a couple of people on your mind, it's okay to keep a door open, communication alive, until I find myself, no, this is the person who I am going to call. That's very different to which I have a group of friends, I'm not yet in a relationship, there's a few people on my mind, I'm not sure. Some people, that's how their mind is, they're just everywhere at the beginning. Some people are very decisive. I like this person, bang. Other people, not so much, so they're thinking through it. That's okay. You keep the doors open. You can keep a friendship alive. But then once I realize the person is very interested in me and I'm not interested, and I've got 3 other people in mind, then that's what I'm going to say. It's wrong, because I'm just dragging people along for no reason. The chance of continuing is very low. So I'm just harming other people. So it's okay to keep it alive very early on. But once, as I said, you then need to start then making a decision. And then once I make a decision, follow your decision, close those doors. It is not okay to keep those doors open at that point.
Could you keep the friendship door open, or is that harming the other person?
I guess it depends on the state of the relationship. If the person's very interested in me and I'm now in a relationship outside, I don't keep that open, giving someone hope, because that's unfair. It's very unfair. You close the door, let them move on. If this doesn't work out and I'm still interested and they're still interested, okay. If they're not, they've moved on. It's not fair that they get dragged along. Remember, as Abuna said, you're answering to God. We're not here to harm each other, We're here to make a good choice and follow our choice all the way through.
I just had another question as well. Going back to when you were saying, like how to pick the one out of if you had multiple options, how do you choose who? Is it fair to say that if you were to pray and get the guidance of your confession father, no matter what your decision is, it'll be blessed? Like you might find that you ended up making the right decision based on if you're spiritually sound, does it really matter who you choose if you had options or whatever?
I guess back to what we said at the start, you're in the dating phase. The deal's not done. It's, it's your time to figure out the person that you're getting to know. And I think God takes care of us. I think let God be your matchmaker, right? If you're honest in your own spiritual life and your service and you're committed to God, there's no way that God's going to let you down. Whether it's this relationship works out or not, who cares? God's going to be your matchmaker. He's going to give you the right person at some stage. That's just my point of view.
I've done. Someone else should keep track of this.
Is it okay for Christians to use dating apps?
It was before our time. I don't know what dating apps are like. Dating apps, I don't see why not, unless there's something about dating apps that I don't know.
Look, I've met lots of people in very good relationships from dating apps, and that's okay. It's the way the world is at the moment. It's how you meet people. But of course, as Abuna said, there is a distinction between dating apps and dating apps, okay? So there's the ones that are not targeted at proper, meaningful relationships. There's the ones targeted at very irregular behavior, okay? So that's not the kind of thing we're talking about. But, especially like Christian dating apps, they're okay. We would love to one day create a Coptic dating app, I met a couple of people overseas that had met on an Orthodox dating app. They were in America and they met each other from across the country. And they were in a wonderful relationship. So it is okay. It's a method. But of course, you have to be very, very cautious because you don't know these people. So you have to be really, really cautious. But in principle, it is okay if it's done in the proper way. Yeah. You're going to add something smart, Alec.
That was my question. This is yours.
No.
What do I do if I feel like my partner isn't on the same page as me about someone else flirting with them or meddling in our relationship?
I think that's an easy one. I'm happy to take this. I think it's absolutely not okay for your partner to be flirting with someone else. There's no such thing as a guy or a girl best friend of the opposite gender. I think it's totally inappropriate. I think it's totally inappropriate, and you should speak to them, and they should have willing. But just because I'm saying it so firmly doesn't mean you tell them you're wrong. But they should be willing to change, and if not, then exactly what Abuna said a little bit differently. You got to get out of jail free card. You should never feel like you're in jail, and if you feel like you're in jail, you got to get out of jail free card. And as Jos said at the beginning, it's your time to be analytical. I think it's never wrong to feel. If it's a week out of the wedding and you feel like I'm stuck or I'm doing this, because you should never feel that, I've come this far, I've paid this much for the wedding, what are my friends going to say? If we're in the same social friend group. So, short answer to that question is I think it's never appropriate.
Can I just add to it as well? So, it happens all the time actually that couples come and one party is not comfortable, the other one is flirting, feels like the other one is flirting, the other one doesn't necessarily think they're flirting. So there's two sides to the coin, right? Always remember this. Number one is if I'm being told I'm flirting, even if I don't feel like I am, respect your partner and try to correct your behavior. There is things in your behavior that's disturbing your partner. Okay, so that's the side of the person who's being asked to tone down their behavior, Tone it down, respect it, understand that maybe it's you, or sometimes we play dumb and we think we're not, and we are actually, sometimes we're a bit blind, whatever. Even if I don't mean it, try to correct your behavior. This other side of the coin is the other person sometimes, be careful that you're being too controlling, right? So be cautious of being too controlling, constantly trying to correct the other person's behavior. If I've said it now 10 times and they haven't corrected their behavior, either there's something wrong in their behavior and I need to reconsider my place in this relationship, or I'm being too controlling and they have to consider their place in the relationship. Either way, there's something is gone haywire there between the two of us. It's a complete misunderstanding of each other's behavior. So be, again, cautious of being on either side of that coin. But definitely, if I'm being told that your behavior needs to be adjusted, respect it, take it seriously, don't ignore it. Don't just say they're being too controlling, try. If it's repeated and repeated and repeated, it's either they're being too controlling or I'm not managing my behavior well. Either way, there's something wrong there, because then there's a lack of trust will build and build and build in that relationship.
What's your question next one?
Oh, answer phase.
What do I do if I feel like my partner is drastically different from how they were in the honeymoon stage compared to now after a couple of years?
I think relationships are never one stage. I think it's always up and down, even after marriage. But it should be heading in an upwards trajectory, I think. And if you feel like there's a problem, I think it's time for a conversation. And if the conversation is not working, you speak to your confession father. No one changes. What you see is what you get. So I think it's important to iron things out very early on. And I think sometimes your partner may not be aware. They may have just gotten a little bit too comfortable. And sometimes a conversation can fix that. Sometimes not.
Yeah, I think that's, if I may, Buna, I think that's perfect and probably realistic. But again, you got to get out of jail free card. Get out, because there is an obvious honeymoon phase. That's so lovey-dovey at the start and it's emotional, but then once things start to settle, that's probably closer to the reality. And it's not the reality, because the reality is yet to come after you've been married for a year or two. So I think, to be a little bit pessimistic, it might even get worse. That complacency might even get worse. So this is the new normal, and you can, I like Yoss's perspective. You speak about it, and if it's as easy as a conversation and you get back on track, fantastic. But if not, then don't be hoping for that honeymoon phase that was the first few months of dating, because it's not a reality. And like Abuna said, there's before marriage and after marriage. And before marriage, it's all the same rule applies. You get out. If it's after marriage, well, it's a different story. Is that all right, Abuna? Mm-hmm.
Okay, what are some ways then that you can get over pain and guilt of a heartbreak, or like letting go of someone you still love?
I feel like it's a more feminine question. Oh no, I don't mean that in a bad way. But Yoss is more in touch with her emotional side.
I'm probably a bit more unemotional, but I think it is what it is. I think heartbreak is agonizing, and you'll get over it. You'll move on with time. I think God took you out of that relationship for a reason. Perhaps you don't know it now. So objectively speaking, you will be okay. You may not you might not know that at that moment in time, but you will be okay. There's no point sitting there and dwelling on it for days and months and, unemotional female perspective. But
and I want to say, that I think it's very normal for a guy to go through that as well. But I think the advice is better coming from a female.
Look, and if you are trying to move on and you can't move on, sometimes, unfortunately, we really struggle to move on for whatever reason. It is an opportunity, as Yoss was saying, is cling to God, cling to Him. Don't go the other way as you struggle, okay? God will get you out of it, and you can be assured that you will move on from that. And you beg God, don't let this cripple me. Don't let me dwell in this. And God will not let you dwell in it, and He will let you move on, and He will look after you. It's a guarantee. What you do in the meantime is up to you, because He will resolve that problem for you, right? And as you move into another relationship, you will be fine. The problem is that in that period, as I catastrophize the problem, I'm never going to love anyone else, I'm never going to whatever, then you can start making mistakes in that era of your life. So that's when you cling to God, hold on to God, give yourself over to good things in that time as you try and recover, like service, like caring for others, like maybe your studies, you develop in that period of time. If you do that period correctly, then at this point when you've recovered, then you're in a good place, as opposed to now I've dropped myself to this level while I'm trying to recover. So do the best you can to hold on to God, because that is an opportunity for you to hold on to God and for God to show you that there's really nothing to be afraid of.
Okay, how can I make the right decision about whether to pursue a monastic life instead of being in a relationship?
I think it's a really good question, and it's a calling, and it's about knowing God's will, and you will feel that in your heart. You will pray, you'll read the Bible, you'll get messages, and I think, to be frank, I think it's just like priesthood is a calling, marriage is a calling, and monasticism is a calling. It's a spiritual calling. You spend retreats. If you feel that in your heart, I don't think you should think that, oh no, that's not for me, or how could I? It's something unattainable. No, it's a very real thing, and we're very lucky here in Sydney that the monks that we're exposed to are very real, and we grew up with some of them. One of them actually was a youth here at this church, so it's a very real thing. You try to find your calling, you pray, you spend time in retreat, and it could be.
Yeah, I think it needs a lot of time and discernment. It's not easy decision to make. You need a lot of discussion with your confession father. You spend time with the monks. You spend time, or the nuns. You have to spend time because, and then even then you're a novice for a period. So it's like an engagement period where you are free to walk away and whatever. So it's not an easy decision. There's a lot of prayer, a lot of discernment, a lot of discussion with your confession father, and then God will call you if that's the calling for you.
How are we tracking for time?
There's only a couple more.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Can you marry someone who's not Coptic Orthodox even if they're still Christian?
I'm probably not the right person.
What's your answer? I discussed this with Abuna, so it's more appropriate, but it's too humble. So the answer is you can, but just be aware of the differences that are there, and that there might be extra hoops to jump. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and there are very successful marriages that we see that are mixed marriages, 100% successful. But just be aware that there are going to be other conversations to be had. For example, kids growing up, which church are you going to attend? And also, so is this person, for example, do they love the Coptic church? Do they love God? Do they love the church for the church? Or is it just one step, one hurdle to jump just to get to the marriage? And if it is the latter, then it might be hard to maintain your connection with the Coptic church. But having said that, and I speak honestly, so I see, for example, an example where the partner who has come from outside is actually positively encouraging the partner inside. So the answer is yes, but just have an open mind, and there's a lot more considerations to consider. Is that fair?
Yeah, very. And I think as well, your criteria is that the person is God-fearing, so I think it's important that we're not trying to go for someone who's outside the Christian community, who is in Christian by name only and zero God-fearing attitude. You're going to have a much, much, much higher mountain to climb in that relationship. So I think God-fearing is your primary criteria, and that's very important. And then Coptic Orthodox, who comes from a similar background, cultural mindset, everything is ideal. It's much easier. You understand one another. Your family is going to accept. So challenges that you may face when you decide to go ahead with someone outside the church is your family might react badly, right? It might be a big process if they accept at all. Then the way we understand things the way we understand church, the way we understand family life, the way we understand discipline, fasting, all these things. So there is a lot of factors involved, not just simply I'm emotionally attached to this person. But yes, at the end of the day, if the person is suitable and God-fearing, my family is comfortable and it's all settled, and then I speak to my confessor father and it's okay, then yeah, it's okay, and there's wonderful people in our church from outside, but do it with a bit of caution. Don't just jump into anything because I like talking to this person. Okay, so just be a bit cautious, and then God will guide you in a lot of prayer, and bring your parents on the journey for the love of God.
How long should it be between the talking, getting to know each other, and the dating stage?
I'm not sure there's an answer to that. I think it would be case by case, and I think you take things slow, and I think it depends on what stage you are of life. Are you a uni student? Are you working? Do the families know each other? Have you known this person your whole life? Or I don't think there's a one size fits all.
What was the question?
How long do you
Between like the talking and getting to know each other, and then the dating stage.
Dating stage meaning you seeing each other one-to-one outside? What does that mean? I know you guys have all these funny lines and titles, and
Yeah,
it
like
doesn't
before
make
you commit and like you're dating.
I think what it means, Buna, is that when you kind of formalize and ask the person out.
Yeah.
So flirting before you ask someone out.
The flirting. No, it's getting to know, like they're exclusive. I think what she's talking about, there's a stage where you're talking exclusively.
Yeah.
Correct?
And then like officially dating.
Yeah. So obviously I don't know the answer to this question because I don't understand the question. But I think, I guess, at the end of the day, these are artificial lines and titles. People, is he my boyfriend now? He's not my boyfriend now. Is he my, are we dating or are we talking? Are we, I think, like, all right, this is all good for you to have maybe in the back of your mind somewhere, but it's either I'm being honest in this relationship, trying to get to know someone for marriage, right, or not. Whether or not we're physically going on a date or talking on the phone, it's the same. To me, it's the same. It doesn't make a difference. And then you ask, really what's guiding that decision is your discussion with your family, right? So you shouldn't be going out one-to-one with anyone without your parents approving that. That's the reality.
Yeah, and I think, Abuna, is it correct to say that not to let it drag on forever? So as in to make a decision, if it's taking some time, make a decision, are you going to go ahead or not go ahead? So case by case, exactly as Jos said, but maybe it shouldn't be this chronic dating phase without making any moves. Is that right?
100%. Yeah.
Do you think it's bad if I feel like I love my partner a lot more than they love me?
I think it was Jos's turn.
I just answered.
Go for it. Is it bad if I think that I love my partner more than they love me? Well, I don't think so. Look, I think it's only an issue if I feel that my partner is not committed to the relationship. But if they're both committed and that's just the way I feel, maybe it's not true. As long as we both love God, number one, and we're heading in the right direction, and we love each other, and we're faithful to each other, and there isn't any of the other nonsense that we spoke about, like flirting outside and whatever, then I think I should reflect inwardly and say, why do I think that? If my partner is doing all the right things, maybe my expectations are unreasonable. And maybe I'm just more emotional than my partner is. If he's doing or she's doing all the right things, then I think it's totally okay. Jos, do you have something?
I think people express love differently, and you may not see the way that your partner loves you as much as you love them. And I think it's important to recognize. One of you guys mentioned love languages. So everyone expresses love differently. But I think if you're both putting effort into the relationship, I'm not sure that's a huge issue.
Can I come back to the last question just very quickly? Because the very first question, Abuna, was, should I put my relationship status on social media? I think not. Speaking about the last question, and there's vague lines: are we courting? Are we dating, or whatnot? I think if you do that, you're being way too open, and you might feel a sense of I'm stuck. Everyone knows now. I'm going to be there's judgment if we break it off. So it's unnecessary. We said definitely your parents, and I think social media is completely unnecessary, and then you find the happy medium when the time's right. So I just want to come back to that.
Okay, this is a bit different. Is it bad to stop talking to your parents because they're toxic and they've tried to amend the relationship, but issues and problems persist?
They've tried to amend which relationship?
Between them and their parents.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's on a different direction altogether. Yeah, look, no, in general terms, we don't try not to cut off my relationships with my parents and things like that. If you need spiritual advice to help yourself navigate that, sometimes I am part of the problem. It's not just my parents. It's not good enough to just say my parents are toxic and I'm going to cut them off. We have to honor our parents, and we have to learn how to deal with my parents and talk to them and navigate our relationship. So no, I don't think it's okay to just cut off your parents. But if you're struggling in your relationship with your parents, get advice, get help. There's people out there that can help us manage it. And it could be, a big part of it is my behavior, and that's causing that problem. So everything's case by case in terms of navigating that, but I think don't cut off your parents, no.
Okay, this will probably be our last question, unless anyone on the floor has. But should love overcome immaturity and misplaced priorities in a premarital relationship?
Can you repeat the question?
Should love overcome immaturity and misplaced priorities in a premarital relationship?
I don't think so. I think it's very easy to be caught up in the warm and fuzzy and the emotional. But as I said earlier, it's the time to be analytical. I think it's time to realize what your future husband or wife's priorities are going to be. I feel like that's make or break. I don't think you should ever be guided by your emotional head. You just switch that off for a little bit and put on your rational hat. Not saying that love and emotions and all that aren't important, but I think it's very easy to miss certain things that are really important.